Oh, I expect my life to end pretty soon. You know, I'm 71 years old. And I have great faith, though. I have unshakable faith. I've never been angry with God. I've never turned my back on God, so to speak. I never thought that God wasn't there. That I knew that, see, He's my counselor. He's my wisdom. All the good things of my life come from Him.
Johnny Cash had maybe an octave and a half to work with.
Well, I find a new place to dwell.
He wasn't much of a guitar player either, and he sits on more lists of the greatest American musicians than almost anyone who's ever lived.
I hear the train a-coming, it's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when.
He came out of a cotton field in Arkansas, walked into Sun Records, and told Sam Phillips he was a gospel singer. Phillips sent him away and told him to come back with something he could actually sell. What Cash brought back was a sound nobody had heard, a freight train rhythm they got by weaving paper through the guitar strings because there was no money for a drummer.
When he was on the stage, you couldn't take your eyes off him.
Then came all of it. Folsom Prison, the black clothes, the pills.
He was taking up to 100 pills at a time.
The arrests, the wreckage. He set fire to a national forest and got sued for it. He smashed the footlights at the Grand Ole Opry and got banned. Country radio quit playing him, his label dropped him, and by the mid-'80s, everyone had written him off.
Cash's arrest in 1965 is particularly interesting. He was caught smuggling not just large amounts of amphetamines in the form of dexedrine, but also Equinil tablets. These are tranquilizers which Johnny would have used to counteract the effects of the amphetamines when he needed to calm down or sleep.
He was 62 when a hip-hop producer from Los Angeles showed up and asked him to sit alone in a room with one guitar and nothing else. That turned into the last 10 years of his career, and the best of them. And here's the part nobody can properly explain. Punk bands claim him, rappers claim him, metal bands claim him, country claims him. A man who couldn't sing high and couldn't play fast somehow ended up belonging to everybody. He died in 2003, 4 months after June. 2 decades on, the black is still the most recognizable uniform in American music. So how good was Johnny Cash really? Here's what the people who knew him say.
Speaking of being 17, Johnny Cash was my first encounter with what I thought sex appeal was, feeling really drawn to someone. I mean, I saw him on stage and I just felt things that I'd never felt before. Right. I did, because he had that funny way of, you know, like how Elvis did. I didn't know what all the feelings were, but I...
Something special, something different about people, well, like yourself as well. You know, you see it immediately. There's a magnetism or something.
Oh, am I turning you on, right? Am I?
Yeah.
You turn me on.
Thank you very much.
Well, there was 2 or 3 Johnnies, you know. There was the iconic man in black, body language, voice, great artist, poet, larger-than-life individual. And then there was another side of him, was this playful. He was a really playful guy. He was a kid, and a lot of times I got to be around him in kind of kid-like, especially I'm working on another memoir that a lot of it takes place in Jamaica at their house in Cinnamon Hill, because we got into a lot of stuff down there that was fun and crazy and makes for good stories. Really playful guy. And then there was another side of him. There was a real dark side of him. We talked about coming up in the 50s, just breaking in, and all the doctors would give you uppers. And you driving around from 600 miles between gigs. And, you know, you're taking speed. We talked a lot about that. And how God, I'm glad I didn't come up in that era. But that stuff is rough.
Johnny Cash had gone 25 years of not having success. And when I signed him, he didn't even know why I was interested. He's like, why do you think working with you is going to be any different than working with anyone else? Like, he had given up. In my living room, he would just play me songs on an acoustic guitar. And there was an honesty in what was happening there. We didn't know that we were making a record. At that time, we were just looking for songs. We went through hundreds of songs and then picked a handful to try to record. And when we went into the studio with the band, it didn't have what the living room recordings had. There was some intimate honesty, and we'd never heard Johnny Cash that way before. So that led to the first album, which was a solo acoustic album, and that was a real revelation.
You mentioned Johnny Cash. I had the blessing in my life of getting to know him. And as a believer, I don't know if you know, I'm a believer, I'm just not a very good one, but there was not a pious bone in his body. And I learned that about the company he would choose. He didn't like, he got nervous around people who were too self-righteous. And he had this huge spirit in him, you know, a prayerful spirit. Myself and Adam Clayton were driving through America, I think around the time of the Joshua Tree. And I'd met Johnny a couple of years, he said, you know, I found out where he lived. He had a zoo in Nashville. He had a house in Nashville. And we go in to meet June, his missus, and Johnny. And he shows us this table's filled with plates of everything. Like, I'm like, wow, we're coming with just the two of us. They said, no, honey, that's my cookbook. I'm just doing a photo shoot for my cookbook. We're in here, you know, we're having a... So we go into their kitchen, and we sat there, myself and Adam, and Johnny goes, shall we pray? And Adams wasn't a praying type at that time, but he was like, wow, it's Johnny Cash. So, you know,
you have to pray.
We all held hands and whatever. And Johnny Cash made this beautiful, poetic blessing. And I just thought, like, wow, of course he's touched. And then he just turned to Adam and just goes, sure missed the drugs, though. And Adam just fell in love with him, you know, because he couldn't be pious.
Right.
He had to be himself.
We met Johnny Cash.
Oh, he did?
When we were at the Beatles. He came to our last live show.
He did?
And he loved it.
Oh, and you met him after the show?
No, because we ran.
Oh, he did?
No, we ran. You know, at the end of every show, we had to run for the truck or whatever we were getting into that day.
Right. You'd be attacked by fans.
Wasn't always a limo.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So you were unable to meet Johnny Cash?
No, he hung out with us.
Oh, he did?
When we got there, he hung out with us, and we went on, and then we had to run. And he ran after us. Yeah. And he was trying to, leave them alone!
Did you ever visit the U.S. before the Beatles, like when you were a kid?
No. First time was 1964.
In 1964.
And it was so thrilling because all the music we all loved came from America.
Uh-huh.
It was just, and to be in America, and, you know, I always use this line, we were flying into New York, and it felt like this big octopus caressed our plane down. Yeah, and I hadn't smoked dope either. Yeah.
If you think about it, though, that octopus caressing your plane as it touches down is a terrifying thought. It really is. Did you, because I know, I think, I'm not sure, but at that time there were so many cowboy movies, and I know, like, you were a fan of Gene Autry.
Gene Autry is one of my musical impressions as a lad.
You and Timothy Chalamet didn't really, like, spend time together outside of shooting. Why, and what was that like?
You know, I think it's just the best thing to do. There's no room for that. I would love to show pictures of my kids on my phone and ask how your mom is doing, but really we're here for a period of time to make this, and you're never going to get that back. And I think that's what Timmy and I understood. And so there's not a lot of chit chat in between just about the scene. And
Because you want to stay in character, because you don't want other influences.
Yeah, like for example, I had a couple interviews that I memorized that had the cadence and the tone of his speech, and so if I were to go out and talk about other things that are not important to the scene, then I'd have to come back to those things. But Timmy's the real deal. He's done a fantastic performance. It's an incredible feat that he's done. Edward, Monica, Elle, it's just a great cast.
It was meant to not be, I put noise through the whole thing, so there's no chance it can have any commercial life. It was an honest thing, you know, it wasn't meant to be song lyrics even, it was just, it's how I felt, and it felt desperate when I wrote it, and just had it gets to the core. Years later, of course, with Johnny Cash, Rick Rubin, who's a friend, called and said, would you mind if we try this song? Of course not. It seemed weird, okay, you know, and I assumed they're probably doing 100 songs, so. Then I get the recording of it a little bit later, and that felt weird, because that's my song, you know, and that big voice in there, and it just felt weird at the moment. I remember I was in the middle of the Fragile when I heard it. I'm not ready to process what this is right now. Okay, cool, yeah. And then I got the Mark Romanek video, and that was like, Jesus Christ, you know. Thought of, here's a thing I wrote from a very intimate place, and it's connected with someone else with a larger-than-life personality, and then oddly it becomes a kind of epitaph for his life. And it happened to be filmed by one of the greatest directors ever, and presented in such a beautiful way. It was like, it reminds you of the power of music and how important it is, you know?
Albums that become my favorite albums, I don't get the first time I'm listening to it. But I can't stop listening to it because I know that there's something I'm not getting, you know what I mean? And Hurt was my way in to a record that I've listened to hundreds of thousands of times. Obviously I didn't know Trent then. I was with him when we were working in New Orleans when Mark Romanek's video came out. And I do remember watching that. I don't know what you can say about that video, you know, I mean it was like, it was incredible.
Befriended a guy named John Carter. He never talked about being Johnny Cash's son. He wasn't one of those guys. We became friends, formed a band together. I was to the point where I couldn't make rent. And he's like, man, just come over for lunch, hang out. I remember knocking on the door and I looked down, the screen door was propped open with a Grammy. And Johnny answered the door.
Johnny Cash answers the door.
Yeah, and I was totally taken back by it. I ain't gonna lie. June said I came over for lunch and never left, which is pretty much true. Everything I owned was in the car anyway.
What was that like hanging out with Johnny Cash? I mean, was he like a mentor to you?
He was like my second dad,
yeah,
in a way. I mean, we became really close. I mean, it's weird. I wasn't really starstruck around him because he was so humble. We'd sit around and talk for hours, and he just gave me career advice. I'll never forget some of the advice he gave me. He was amazing.
And there was something about this voice that just, it followed me all my life. And eventually he recorded one of my songs, The Mercy Seat, I don't know, like 50 years later. And then I got called into the studio by Rick Rubin to actually sing with Johnny Cash.
What did you guys
It was the most
sing?
extraordinary thing. We did a version of a Hank Williams song, Feel So Lonesome I Could Cry.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really beautiful moment. But I was like, I was terrified to sing with my my hero, mostly because of his extraordinary, the sort of gravitas of his voice. And I was, I've always had huge misgivings about my voice and thought that I was going to screw the whole thing up. But anyway, when I got there quite early at the studio, and when he arrived, he was, this was close to when he actually died, and he was not well at all, and it was, when I saw him, it was a sort of terrifying apparition of a man so different than the man that I thought him to be. And when he entered the studio, he had something wrong. Where if he came from light into dark, he couldn't see. So he was essentially blind, walking down these stairs towards me with his hands out like this, going, "Are you there, Nick? Are you there?" And I'm looking at him thinking, how is this man going to perform. It was a, and then he sat down and he sat down with me and he said, look, you know, I've had the flu, I've had laryngitis, I have no voice, I've never asked Jesus for anything, he said. I never asked Jesus for anything, but I had to perform with you today, and last night I dropped down on my knees and I said, Jesus, I got to sing with Nick. Give me back my voice. Give me back my voice. And June Carter's there as well, and she's going, hallelujah, hallelujah. And it was an extraordinary moment. Then he goes, I woke up this morning and I'm singing like a bird. He said like that. And then he sat down, this depleted man, and just transformed. And this is what I'm talking about, music. Transformed from this sort of suffering individual into something really extraordinary, literally before my eyes. And we sang this sort of, this beautiful song together, and we finished the song, and there was this sort of dead silence, and Rick Rubin said, gentlemen, we're going to have to do that again. And I'm like, I'm flat, right? And he goes, nope, Johnny's flat. And I was like, oh, wow, amateur.
Johnny Cash fucking sucks. He is the most overrated artist in American history, and if you like Johnny Cash, you're a fucking fraud and a liar. More of you have a t-shirt of him going like this than have bought a fucking album. None of you can name a fucking album of his. He had 4 fucking songs, and those songs were fucking shit. Ring of Fire, Walk the Line, A Boy Called Sue, hilarious. And that one about the prison. I've lived in this country for 17 years, right? I've never stopped at the lights and had a convertible drive up next to me. He's a fucking hack, Johnny Cash. You called him the Man in Black. He was just a fat cunt trying to look slim. We all do it. I'm 300 pounds. What was his catchphrase? Hi, I'm Johnny Cash. Ooh, what a wordsmith, eh? How did you come up with it, Johnny? Well, I went hi, and then I said I'm, and then I said my name. His biggest concert was in a prison, and that's because the crowd couldn't fucking leave.